My name is Steve Hitz, and I'm one of the founders of Launching Leaders, and it's my honor to be able to share a few thoughts today on taking control of your life. I know that we're all used to a little Zooming these days as we live through the COVID epidemic and pandemic worldwide. So I hope you're all well and that you're finding that this presentation will have some use for you. Many of my stories are woven throughout the book Launching Leaders, which you're now familiar with if you're taking this course. Launching Leaders, an empowering journey for a new generation. And so I'll try not to repeat myself on some of the stories that you'll read about. A little bit about me. I guess the most amazing thing about me is that I'm married to the most amazing woman in the world. So I'm just a mediocre dude striving to become, but my wife is not. She's amazing, and so that makes, she's the biggest part of our formula for success in our equation. You should know also how much I love the attributes of the rising generations. I consider myself a boomer with a millennial heart and have felt that way for a long time. Now, a little secret about myself is much of my life I operated from a sense of fear, kind of a sense of trying to succeed so I didn't fail. I lived what we call the formula of success, as it was taught to me by a mentor early on in my life, or in our early 20s. My wife and I received these kinds of teachings, and we applied them, and they made a huge difference in our life. But I didn't really know why I ought to do the things that I was doing until later in life. And so I'm hoping that through some things I share, you can get that understanding early on, because it will enrich your entire meaning of who you are and why you actually exist. I spent my days, or do spend my days, continually surrounded by the greatest lives who've ever lived. I have an extensive library, and many of my books are my friends. Their teachings have woven the fabric of my soul and who I am. So I encourage you to make great books your friends every day. Take time to read widely, various topics, things you think you have a belief in and things you don't. Take the time also to spend some time in the Launching Leaders course, either in the small segments or the entire 12-week course. It's free, and if you take the time, it really is empowering. So what does it mean to take control of your life? Who are you really? These are big questions. No matter how you came into this world, you need to understand it was no accident that you live in this moment. So it's important to take the time to figure out who you are and the core of who and what you want to become. Now, one of the things I do as an entrepreneur is I raise some cows. And one time I was out to check on some newly born calves, and 100 yards it seemed, Ginger came with me. About 100 yards away from the herd was this little calf laying on its side, motionless in the grass. I watched it for a while and no movement. And so I was worried, because sometimes we lose calves for a variety of reasons. And, you know, we really kind of have relationships with these animals. We love them. And so Ginger and I walked over toward this calf, and I got right up next to it and still no movement. And I got down on my knees and I put my hand on it, and I could tell it was kind of warm. And then Ginger said, "Steve?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Turn around." And I turned around, and this big mama cow was charging me. She was in a pack with everyone else about 100 yards away, but now she was about 20 yards from me and just barreling down on me. So I jumped up, and when I jumped up, she came over and she nudged that calf, and it jumped up, and and it was its mom, but that cow knew that that was its calf, and that calf knew that was his mom. That taught me something very important that day that I probably already knew, is that no one is born without purpose, and everyone eventually needs to know where they came from and to who they belong. So it's part of the purpose of what I want to talk about today, as we try to take some control of our life. The other thing that's important is that, yeah, this is important for you to do, but it's not just about you. Everything you do in life affects everyone around you. How will your life bless others? How will the world be different because you lived? So that's why it's important to, I think, include God in your quest. What would God have you do or become? Does your life's vision align with what you perceive God's vision is for you? All very important questions. Also important to separate the trivial from the vital as you contemplate your path forward. We all have about the same amount of time in a day, and how we spend that time is really, really important. So I think as we're quarantined throughout the world, as I'm giving this presentation, hopefully it won't be long, much of the world is partially or fully quarantined. And I think it gives us all a little bit different perspective on what matters most. So let's talk about that as we journey forward. One of the things that we've developed is what we call the cycle of spiritual guidance, or the cycle of God's guidance. And this is just simply a pattern that I developed over a lifetime, and we incorporated into Launching Leaders. You may incorporate all of it or parts of it, or you may find some of it resonates a great deal. But use what you will. But this is a cycle that I think will help you move forward and actually take control of your life. The first in this cycle, which keeps repeating itself, sometimes several times a day, is to discover your true identity. Now, one of the things that I think you'll find the relevance in this story, but when my wife and I were young, our kids were young, we were living in California at the time. And so we went to these places, maybe you've heard of them, they're Christmas tree farms. And you search for the most beautiful Christmas tree, and then you take it and you go home and you begin the Christmas season. And I had this inkling that I just wanted to find the most unique tree. I didn't care if it was beautiful or not. And I kind of shared this with my family, and they thought I was just like, yeah, whatever. And I saw this tree that just made me laugh. It just brought joy to me. And I had the saw. And so as they walked away and were a little ways away, they could hear me sawing. And they came running back, screaming, no, no. But I cut that tree down. And so I felt like we had to take it. And it became a tradition. For many years, we decided to find the most unique tree that would make us laugh. And we provided for our home a tree that needed a home. When I left the parking lot that day, the owner of the tree farm came over to me, and he wanted to shake the hand of the man who had the courage to take such a tree. And he offered me a discount. And I said, I would never devalue this beautiful tree by the discount, even though I appreciate it. And so over the years, we named our trees, and you can see they're very unique and weird. But the point I'm making is that once they're adorned, once you take care of them and you give that tree purpose, it becomes beautiful. Look what this one, it became, it was growing about a foot out of the ground, grew parallel to the earth. It was really weird looking, but when it was in our home, it was hard to put up, but it was gorgeous. And it was just really one of our favorite trees. So I think that however you decide to start creating this identity of who you are. Understand that you're unique, you're special, you were born for a purpose at this time in your life, and it's really up to us to discover that over a lifetime, really, because we keep discovering it. The next phase in the cycle is then, if you understand something of who you are, is to trust that inner voice. Some people call it different things. I'll just call it in this sense, the inner voice. And learning to listen to what it's saying. You've heard it from time to time. You just get this idea that, hey, you should do this, or have you thought about this? Or you should contact this person today. Anyway, when we have these voices come to our mind, it's important to understand that they're impressions, and they may be part us, they may be part of what God is trying to tell us. So don't discard the emotion of it, because emotion is part of who we are. So anyway, I encourage you to try to listen to that inner voice and then act upon it. Now this is the hard part, because I bet a lot of us have had these impressions and then we do nothing about them. And then later we discover that, wow, I should have acted on that impression. It would have made a huge difference. So act right away on the things that come to you, and know that they're probably not just you thinking of them, but maybe you're receiving guidance, right? Maybe you're receiving guidance along the way because you're trying to discover the completeness of who you are and will become. Now, after you've acted on it, and sometimes things happen right away and we really feel blessed because we acted on that emotion, that inner voice. Sometimes we act on it and nothing happens. Nothing happens for years. We think, well, that was weird. I felt that impression was really a good one. Wonder why it didn't really seem to bless my life or the life of others. Well, we have to learn to be at peace with heaven's timing, because our timing is not God's timing. And it's always God's timing that matters most. And if we're patient and we still act upon those impressions, the time will come where we'll understand that, yeah, that was right, and we did act for a reason, and we'll understand it eventually. So don't abandon inspiration that comes because it just doesn't cause something to happen right away. And then the last part of the cycle is to live well. You know, if we have a purpose in our life and we're trying to establish our core values, which you'll learn to do in this course, living well is to live according to the values that we've established, and to make that our standard, and to honor those values no matter what. So this is kind of the cycle, you know, we keep doing it over and over again. Now, one of the things that that we find as we go through this cycle is sometimes we're surprised. Sometimes we see things a little differently than they really are. But I wanted to emphasize one more thing that's not actually in the book, but that's trying to establish some sort of vision along the way, okay? And then to make that vision stick. State your vision simply, repeat it regularly, celebrate the vision that you've made for yourself in your life, and embrace it. It can be simple. My wife and I are away from the corporate world. We're doing entrepreneurial things of our own and kind of retired, I guess, to some degree. And so we looked at each other a couple months ago, and it's like, what is our purpose now? What is it? And we established a new vision for ourselves, and it is do some good every day. That's it. That's very simple. It's just very real to us. And we literally every day look at each other at some time in the day. It's like, have we done anything good today? What have you been impressed with? And following that cycle through, to make our lives effective every day. Ginger's dad lives in a rest home, and you know, he's about 85 or so years old. And in this rest home, there's this, you know, the statue of this wooden carving. And I looked at that for a while and I didn't understand it. And then I saw the shadow that it created up on the wall. Now that's kind of how our lives are as we really try to take control of them and make something of ourselves. We don't always see the end from the beginning. We don't always understand that there are helping hands behind us, people lifting us up, God encouraging us, but it's always there. And if we can understand that vision behind what we're doing, that we're not alone, that we have the support of many, we have mentors, we have great books, we have leaders, and we have the inspiration that comes to us, then we can make more of us than we could ever become, or maybe even thought we could become. So as this program started in New Zealand, and we love the Kiwis, I always like to include something of their culture in what we do. So from me to you, I hope that some of the things that we've talked about today are meaningful, helpful. Dig in, take the time to do it. Take time to have your daily meditation, ponderings, readings, prayers, to move you along this path of developing the person that you know you can become and who God would want you to become. Arahanu, I think I said that right. Thank you, and have a good experience in this course.